So this is Jeff, the big hairy dog. This is physical inventory for version 9. Um, so physical inventory exists in 4 basic steps. Now, I'm not counting the normal preparation, clean up, tag all your items, create a map. Like you need to have a plan for your inventory. You should map it all out, have zones, label the zones, know how you're going to count the stuff, right? But in and of itself, the basic physical exists in 4 basic steps, right? So you could sum it up by saying we start or create a count sheet, we count the stuff, we look at the two numbers compared and look at our discrepancies, and we update and accept the numbers. So there you go. That's basically the best steps for physical inventory. We're going to walk through them now, of course, in detail and make sure we understand them. So physical inventory in version 9 is fully integrated into uh, inventory. So we just go to inventory and we should see on the sidebar menu physical inventory. If you don't, of course, you can right click and go to the menu designer and find physical inventory. Of course, for me, it's on the right hand side, and then you can send it over with the little arrow, right? You can send it over to add it to the menu. Uh, but physical inventory is on the side of inventory. Then we go to stores. Now mine looks like I have an inventory that we will get rid of. So I'm going to get rid of this inactivated. I want nothing in here to taint our experience today. So we'll go back to physical inventory because I want you to see that when you go in for the first time, seeing no file here, it just jumps up and says, hey, do you want to start an inventory, right? I'm going to cancel that and just click new to see that it's exactly the same, right? So if we click new or we just go in fresh, we get the opportunity to create a brand new physical inventory. So um, we got to give it a name. So I'm just going to call it training. Now, normally I got to say I would call it, something a little bit better, PI 2022, right, or something. I would make it more sense of it than just training, but training works for us. So we got a store, we got a name, we click create, we get a filter pops up. Clear all if you have not cleared all. Um, all right, so Franny, I apologize if we weren't letting you in quick enough there. Looks like we may have cut that off. Um, so let me just back up for a second and make sure we're all on the same page. Basically, what we started with is that there are basically 4 steps to physical inventory in here. Start, count, discrepancies, update, and that this here, physical inventory is in fact part of inventory. So if we just go into inventory, like there's regular old inventory, physical inventory should be on the sidebar menu. If it's not, there's a menu designer, it can be added. But if we go into physical inventory fresh, and I know it's fresh because there's no zones, we click on stores, it prompts me to make an inventory, just as if I were to be in here and click new, it would prompt me to make an inventory, right? So we're going to start the inventory, which by starting the inventory will create a count sheet. I'm going to call this, I'm going to call it training, and we're going to click create. So when I'm starting my physical, it pops up and asks me for a filter. If I had something in the filter here, I would clear it, unless I'm doing a physical inventory of a smaller section of some kind, um, that like a filtered, like a cycle inventory. Then I would want to then I want to put in my code. So I could do little inventories every week for one for each department, but that's what the filter is for. If you have it turned on, you may or may not have it turned on. It may skip this step altogether. If you're doing the whole store, you want to make sure it's clear. that the clear all button is gray and click OK, that builds a count sheet. So that's step one right there. That's all of step one. Now we're going to go look inside this. We don't have to, but we're going to do it anyway, right? So if we go to PI inventory, we see a count sheet. So if I have a let's see here, if I have a starting quantity, let's add a column here. We don't really need this column, so it's not included in the default design, but you're on hand. It's nice to see you're on hand. So if we have 49 in inventory, that 49 gets copied over to our starting quantity, i.e. it freezes our on-hand quantities right here, right? Of course, we just started this, so we haven't counted anything yet, right? So we're short everything. Now, if we're negative on hand, then that gets copied over and the discrepancy is positive, right? That's all that's going on here. So we're going to then add counts into this column here, right? Now, again, the proper physical, you should have a map. You should have your store cleaned up. Everything should be tagged. There should be a map, a sketch, whatever you want to call it, of the store, and you should know where everything's going to be counted, right? So that's step two. Let's back out of here. Actually, let's grab some stuff. Let's what we're going to do is we're going to fake a scanner. I don't have a scanner hooked up to this virtual machine, so I'm going to just export out some item numbers there and create an input file that I can bring in to show a count. Now, what we need to do is we need to throw a a bad scan in there, right? So let's say we're scanning these items here, and let's just say that this is a CSV file. So I'll put the comma in there to make it pretty because I think I have a map already built for that kind of thing. And then we'll put some numbers in there or whatever, right? And so let's make the bad scan a quantity one, and let's save this file. Save as, come on. All right, so all I'm doing right now is just saving this file, say on the desktop here or someplace for me to get to it quickly. We'll just call this zone one here. And just to make sure that we're ready for this, save as, let's make a few of these. That way, if we make a mistake on one, I can go to another one easily, right? I'll save as, and we'll do a 3. All right, that should be plenty, right? All right, so step one is to go to physical inventory and inventory, right? So we go into physical inventory, we go to stores, and we add a new physical, right? That and then we give it a name and we pick some stores and we click start, and it creates a count sheet. And now we're going to go to step two. Step two is to go to physical inventory zones. Now you have to turn zones on in system preferences, but zones are immeasurably helpful when you're doing an inventory. It gives you the ability to hold a little section of the count in a zone and validate it before you choose to let it into the bigger picture, if you know what I mean. So if we go to new to create a new zone, there's my store that I started, and I can have a zone name, and the zone name can be pretty flexible. So I got 20 characters in here. This could be, this could be back wall, right? If I'm doing a inventory in more than one store, this could be store one, men's 105, right? I could have whatever zoning plan I want to have in here to make this make sense, right? So can I unmute you? Yes, I can. I will gladly unmute anyone who wants to. Thank you. If I can I undo that? See here. Is that doing it? I just turned on allow mic. All right. So yeah, you hear me. So no, one of our participants wants to actually have voice, and I'm totally good with anybody who wants to jump in and chat. Um, but I've allowed mic on everyone. So if you might be muted on your side too, I don't know. So um, or there's also a chat, right, that you can hop into if you had a question. If you can't get the mic to work, you can absolutely chat. And what do we have here? Admitting, perfect. And all right, can everybody hear me still? It looks like I we can. Um, you don't hear anything. Is that so? I see that you rejoined. Did that help? Can you hear it now? Guessing no, because she just left. It looks like. All right, well, let's push on. If she joins back in, hopefully things will work. All right, so we've got a zone. We click create. It makes a zone for us. I could, if I wanted to, now keep building these, right? So I could have people scanning out in the store. I could be coming in here and making my zones, right? Um, and then when they walk up with a scanner, I could then highlight whatever zone I need to highlight. I would go into um, scanned and add counts. Now, normally, we're probably going to go to portable device. I don't have a portable device because this is a virtual environment. And hopefully you can hear now. I don't know. So in here, I'm going to go to an import file, and I've got a little import map built. This is a kind of an import map you'd use for like ArcGIS or something like that. So I'm going to just open up my browser, go to my desktop, make sure we're on not on data files. We want to be on like text files, right? So there's zone one. We'll select zone one, and we got our file. We've got our map. Click import, and there's total of one item not found. Of course, we knew that was coming, right? We actually front loaded that error to happen. So let's click OK and click close. And there's the items that it brought in. So I scanned a zone just fine. So we scanned a zone, and there's the results of the good scan. Right now, I'm going to back up one layer, and we see that there's errors. So scanned is the good ones, errors are the bad one, and there's the bad scan. Now, for whatever reason, import ID seems to vanish. I don't know why, but if you right-click any column header in a list view, right? We right-click a column header and go to Interface Page Manager, it gives us this screen. And this screen's pretty simple. If it's above the line, it's in. If it's below the line, it's out, right? So it's a pretty simple screen. And now the one we want here is we want import ID. So I'm going to double click import ID to put it above the line, right? Now we can see the bad barcode that we scanned, right? And I read left to right, so I'm going to want the barcode on the left, the quantity on the right. Now, what are these things above and below it? They aren't bad scans. They look to be like good scans. They are good scans. So these are the bracketing items, right? These are the items scanned right before and right after the bad scan, right? So so in this situation here, we could then take this information back to the floor, find the bad scan, right? So um, you can take this information to the floor by using a like we have a BHD physical inventory zone report, right? We can pop that out. Now here's my bad scan on top, and here's the whole order of everything I scanned. So these are the ones that are bracketing at 5 and 6, right? So that I can see kind of here's 5 and 6. I can see roughly where it is in the field, and I could hopefully go back and find it, right? That's a fine method, but some people have pointed out the obvious, which I didn't recognize right away. Do you want to save this? No, I don't. That you could just actually right click, select all, and right click, export this right into Excel or Notepad or any of the above, right? and boom, you have it out and you could print it. Yeah, these things here don't line up with these things here, but who cares? We get it. That's the bad scan, right? So, um, yes, I could show you the steps to import from a portable device. Now that's different. So what you'd have to do a portable device, and that's a fine thing for us to look at. Let's finish this zone here. So this zone here, we would find this item, and one of two things would happen. It would either have a barcode or it would not have a barcode, right? So if it has a barcode, and I think you can actually, like, I think I'm going to try it. I'm probably going to fall on my face here. I think you can try to correct these here. So let's just say there was that one there, right? But see, we get these constraint errors, and I don't know, it messes with you a lot. Yeah. So I'm just going to put that back and say that the best way to handle this here is to just the best way to handle this here is to cancel that edit, is to is just to click resolve. So once you identify these and find them, if you click resolve, it will clear the screen, right? Totally clear the screen, take it all out. So then you can go back over to the scan section, and in the scan section you can add counts manually, right? So then I could put in whatever I need to put in manually, right? I could add this thing, and I could make the count bump up on that one. So what that one is showing right now is showing 5, right, for that item there. I click close, and or maybe it was, or was it already 5? Let's try that again. So add counts. Right now we're showing 5, so I say 10005, and I counted 1. And where's my count? Where's my scan? Oh, scan quantity is 54. Weird. Oh yeah, so I'm looking at the wrong column. I was looking at it on hand. No wonder I wasn't seeing it change. If you look at the right place, it works so much better. Right. So our scan quantity is what gets changed, right? So anytime you can go in and add counts to anything, that you might see out here. Like there's 4 on that one there. So if I put another one in, it goes to 5, right? Boom. Anyway, um, all right. So yeah, there's 3 ways to put data in, right? There's there's the manual input, what I just did, the import, which I just did a minute ago. Then there's a portable terminal. So a portable terminal, you're going to need, and I can't go through all the details on that part, but there is definitely going to be options there. So in workstation preferences, under peripherals, under inventory scanner, you have to specify what kind of scanner you're using, right? So it could be the Palm, it could be the old PT. In Palm, you have both Foundry Logic and you have um, the um, the old inventory scanner program that Retail Pro wrote with the Janims and a lot of other devices, right? So probably it's a Palm, um, and you're probably using basic, not smart scan mode. But if you're using that particular application, if you're using Foundry Logic, that's an irrelevant setting. So you first have to configure the workstation for how you're bringing this in. Now, both the Palm applications and the Foundry Logic require additional software, which I do not have loaded and cannot show you today. So that has to get set up in advance. But basically, then once your device was set up, right, then it would just be a matter of going back into our physical and going to zones, and I don't have any zones here. Am I in the wrong place here? What's going on? Right. Okay, we're good. And then physical inventory zones. That was weird. All right. So anyway, so if you're on a zone, right, uh, and you go into scanned and you click add counts, then you would just click on your portable device, and it would say, hit the send to start your download. Or if it was Foundry Logic, a little window would probably start flashing down below here, right? And it would pop up with a little window, and the little window is sort of overlay, and you'd have different zones that you've already uploaded. You could select one and click, OK, and it would upload that zone, right? So it depends on which scanner you're using, right? On how it's going to prompt you. But that's really it. Once it's set up and configured, yeah, we know. Totally fine. I knew it was going to error out, but but to upload the thing once it's configured is just to click on portable device and then hit send on your device or select from the menu if it's already sent. Foundry Logic sort of relays it to a little queue and it shows in that window. So it would depend on what kind of scanner you have for for a portable scanner. A lot. And on portable scanners, I'm going to strongly recommend that falls into the category of prep, right? So that would be done before the day of physical. Like you'd want to make sure that all of that stuff was working solidly before you got to the point of you know inventory day. You don't want a bunch of people standing around if your scanners aren't working, because that's just not going to be a smart move on anybody's part. So does that answer your question as much as I can? I guess, um, for the portable scanner part. Um, if you rent them from us, we'll send them to be there a day or so ahead of time, and we'll set them up a day or so ahead of time. We don't ever want to be setting them up on the day of the inventory, and then you have to send them back after the day of inventory, right? Okay, so um, pop back over to import, change this to a 2, and import this one. And of course, we got our error. We're going to close that. I want to talk a little bit more about the errors that we can get. Um, so if we have an error here, right? Um, let's say we're scanning items, beep, 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 and we get an error, right? And we keep scanning. Now, the bracketing screens, the items that scan before and after are showing up right here, right? Um, in my example here, what would be the bracketing items? Well, it looks like it'd be 789 and 123, right? Except it would be 789 and 741 would show up in this bracketing screen because the point of a scanner is to count. So this SKU, this record already exists. It would not make another entry, right? This one here would just be incremented to a quantity of 2 in the scanner, right? And this record would never exist, if that makes sense to everybody. So what I'm saying is when you see that the bad scan is it's after this item and before this item, it is, but there might be 10 other items in there too. Depends on how you merchandise and how you scanned, right? So so there's a lot going on there is what I'm saying, right? Um, and again, to clear this here, we go find the item, and if you find the item and it does not have a tag and you cannot correct it, then you move the item to a trouble section, right? You have a trouble table set up, and items that are not able to be counted move to the trouble table so they can get tagged and be counted last, right? We don't hold the whole thing up for one bad item. We clear it, resolve it, we then pop over and either re-enter it right now or we move it to a trouble zone, right? That's it. All right, so step 2 then continues where we basically go and we create a new zone. We upload the contents either with a portable scanner or something. If there are errors, we resolve them and clean them up, move them to the trouble section. We clear the scanner. If you're using an older scanner that requires that you clear it, you got to make sure you clear it or it will upload that contents twice. So we got to be careful. Foundry Logic does not have that issue. The Janum Palm application does. The PTs do, right? So you got to make sure you clear the scanner before it goes back out to the field, right? Then we would print and double check our work. So here I'm inside a zone. I could click print, choose our design file, and print this out, right? So then I could send this out to the field, right? And people could check these import IDs to make sure that they're that they're accurate, right? I mean, if you don't sample this, like we see this one and it says there's 52 2XLs, I'm going to go check the 2XL. I got to say, I don't trust that they counted that correctly. And of course, if we find mistakes at this juncture, we bring this count sheet back with the corrections on it, and we can just go fix these, right? So if we see that there's 52, and then we know that there's should be 5 in there that they fat fingered to type in, and actually typed it in wrong, we can just change it. And if we have to, we can also go add counts, right? I could go and say we also got a 100016 for a quantity of, you know, 5. Okay, bad record number. I took a chance. I was hoping that that was going to work for me, but it clearly did not. Let's try that. All right, so I just added item number 100001 with a quantity 6, right? Boom. And it should be right there. There it is, right there. So I can add in items. So when I'm done, when I've corrected this zone, we believe this zone was counted as accurately as possible, right? Then we back up a layer here and we're going to merge this. So we're going to merge the zone and it gets checked off, see? So that's the overall process of a zone is to identify on the floor, right? So like with a map of some kind, we draw out the little store. It doesn't have to be to scale, right? And we have identified a fixture on the wall, a rounder, a four-way, whatever, and we put numbers on them, right? And then we have people count them. And then we know that we counted everything in the store, right? And then when that zone gets double check that little tiny section. It's much easier to make sure that that section is correct if you're only dealing with a small fixture, right? Then you merge that into the master count. Now, if an item is is in this fixture here, but it's also in the stock room back here, right? And maybe it's on display in this window right here, right? Then it's going to get counted in zone 1, zone 4, and zone 18 or whatever, right? And so if we've got 5 here and 1 up here and another 25 back there, it's eventually going to say that we got 31 altogether, right? As we merge all the zones, if that makes sense to everybody. So a zone is terribly useful in that it isolates a section, lets you evaluate that section, lets you be sure it's counted correctly, and then upload that to the master count. Now, in a perfect world, if every zone's counted perfect, then the physical should be perfect, right? I mean, should be no errors at all. Yeah, well, anyway. So that's step 2. Now in my notes, I have this little goodie right here, which I skipped over, right? Count sheet, right? So if I wanted to count something, if I wanted to take something, I'm gonna uh, take something here in inventory and drop it into a filter. And you could use the filtered view or the quick filter. I don't know that it matters. But if you wanted to isolate something that was important, like higher end jewelry, a leather jacket, kayaks, things that are expensive that we want to be careful with, right? You could filter to those items, right? You could then print a count sheet, right? Select all records. If you and this is a doc design. If you don't have it, you can contact any of our techs. We can get it to you pretty easy, right? So I could I could create this count sheet where I've got my quantities right here, right? Let's blow this up so we can all see it a little bit. There we go, like 150. That's a little easier, right? So I could print this to paper. I could also export this to Excel, couldn't I? Now, if I export this to Excel and I add my counts in here, then eventually when I have all my counts, so let's say that I go through and put some counts in here, whatever, I could then save this, right? At some point, I would have the master one saved. I could then take a copy of it, delete all these, right? So that I just have my SKU and my count, right? Then I could delete this stuff here. I don't need this crap on top. Delete this stuff. Then I could say, File, Save As, And when we go to save it, let's save it on the desktop. We'll call it book one, but we're not going to leave it as XLSXS, right? We're going to change this to CSV, comma, separated value, right? And let's click save and okay and yes. And I know I didn't save it in Excel's wonderful format. And I know it's going to be angry at me for that. And we don't care. We're going to close that. Right. So now, do you want to save this? No, I don't. I've already used that. I'm going to go back into physical inventory, back into my zones, and I'm going to say new zone and pick our store and call this something. And we're going to take our incorrectly spelled something because I can't type to save my life. We're going to go into scanned, add counts, and import. And we're going to go find that file on the desktop. And no, it's not a text file. It's a CSV. We want to go to all files here, don't we? And book one CSV right there, right? And so I've got my map built for a 6-digit ALU with a comma and a count. I'm going to click import and click close. And I just brought all those items in with my ones and my twos, didn't I? So those are just some tricks that I like to make sure you're aware of that you could easily, with a short count sheet like I had, you could have just keyed the things in. I mean, it wouldn't have been that hard. But you could certainly have a bigger one if you needed to be more careful on some more expensive goods and you wanted them to have a little bit more personal touch, shall we say. You could use a count sheet and then you could import it in, especially if you go through Excel. Or you could key it in too. That wouldn't be that hard. Um, all right. So backing up on this, we've got 3 zones. We've merged all 3 zones. So when we've got all of our zones counted and all of our items counted, then we are done with step 2, right? So we've gone through this zone process for as many zones as we have. Now, that brings us to this point here where we're halfway through, and there's a little line in here for a reason. So when you start the inventory, you freeze the book value. When you count the inventory, you then freeze the physical value. At that point, things aren't changing. Your count's in the can, your items have been counted, your beginning quantities are frozen. You can open the biz store. You could start selling stuff. So these 2 steps down here could take place while you're open again. So how does that work? I mean, how is that possible, right? So down here you see a sort of an example, right? If we have 10 and we start the inventory, we haven't counted it, we're short everything. If we go out and we count 8, we're short 2. Everybody agrees with that? We start with 10, we count 8, we're short 2, right? So when we update, it does this here. The new updated quantity is going to be the current quantity plus the difference. So the 8, that the amount we're counting is not, we don't care about that, right? That's not it. It's more about it's about the difference, the -2, than it is about the count. So um, if we take -2 and we add it to 10, we get 8, right? That works. Now, if we're open and we happen to sell some of this stuff, right? So if we sell 5 of these things, then our on hand would change to 5, right? Does the math still work? Yeah. If we had 8 and sold 5, we'd have 3. If we take 5 and we add -2, we get 3. It works, right? Now, where we get in trouble is if something sells, like if we're open while we're doing the count and something sells prior to us counting it, then we would only be able to count 7, which would generate a difference of 3. But the on hand would have changed to 9 because we sold one. And this no longer works. 9 and 3 is not 7, right? You take 9, take away 3, you get 6 because the physical inventory takes it out as well as the receipt having already taken it out, right? So you have to count everything in the store. When you hit the start button, you have to count everything in the store, if that makes sense. That's the way that works. So Now, there are strategies for that. You could start in the stock room. You could count the whole stock room, and then you could close the store. You could run a report of everything you sold. You could export that to Excel and import that as a count, right? I mean, there's lots of things you could do. You just have to have a good solid plan for how you're going to do that. The best plan is to be closed while you're counting, right? That's the best plan. Then you're never going to have an issue with being off. All right. Anyway, so let's back up here and then back up. We can cancel all that. We don't really care about that quick filter and go back to physical inventory stores. And in physical inventory stores, once we have all of our zones counted, we would go to the discrepancy view. So step 3 in our list of exciting thrill-packed steps here is to look at the discrepancies. Right now, the discrepancies are not the whole picture, right? So if I've got a physical inventory, and let's say that of the items in my physical inventory, like there's my whole inventory, right? Let's say I've got errors or discrepancies on, a good third of them, say, right? So these are the ones that have discrepancies. These over here are good, right? Then the discrepancy view takes only these items here and shows you a view of just those items, right? So if you run a report on these items and you look at the starting quantity or the starting value, it's not representing the entire inventory over here, right? The good ones are out. They're good. We don't need to see those. We don't need to evaluate them, right? So just be careful when you're in discrepancy mode and you click print and you choose to see all your discrepancies by department. The starting quantity in this outputted file here, like if I go to the bottom of this and I look at the starting quantities here, right? It's not going to be correct. It's only going to be representing the bad scans, right? At this point, the ones that are either over or short, right? So if I start with any number here and I counted more or less than the start, then I have a discrepancy and it's going to show me those discrepancies. But then once you have this in your hand, you there's different ways to do this. This one's by department, right? Do you want to save this? No, I don't. We also have them by vendor, right? If you want to break it out by vendor, then you can do it by vendor. So there's the same thing broken out by vendor now, right? Apparently, I only have like 3 vendors, so that's probably true. It's a sandbox. There's not much data here, right? It's pretty weak. Um, or you can do it just by all items. There's a couple different views for that, and then there's this other one here, this discrepancies and PI scanner and discrepancies. So some of these are better than others for different applications. Mostly, I gotta say, I lean towards the department one. I need to break this up in a way that I can dole it out to my people, and we can all check some of these and spread the love here, right? Um, so we would take this out to the field, and we would then choose what we're going to fix here. Again, if we have like leather jackets in the list, I'm going to be checking those pretty carefully. If we got chapstick tubes, I'm not going to check those. You know, I don't know that I can. I don't think we can go through everything, right? So we got to pick and choose what we're going to hit, and make sure we find either validate the discrepancy, right, or write down the correction, right? Now, if we have a situation where we start with little number, like right here, we see down here this towards the bottom, 5 from the bottom, we see this started with 5, counted 59, right? And I'm like, what the heck? What's going on with that item, right? So the item is the same item we were picking on earlier, right? 100005. Um, I want to show you a trick that can be useful in troubleshooting that kind of problem. If you have our reports loaded, which will take a second to load. I had everything else loaded, but I didn't have that loaded. Um, yeah, whatever. Great. Reports. In our custom reports from Big Hairy Dog, there's a odd report that we threw in for physical inventory. So if you come down here, you should be able to find a PI zone report, right? And the PI zone report has no filter criteria. You just fire it off. Once you get up to your screen, um, you then would go to find and just do a quick find for whatever item you're having trouble with, right? It then finds the item and lists all the zones it's counted in, right? So it's counted in 4 zones, right? And there's your total over there. This is not making sense. This report seems like it's been hacked up a little bit or something. Oh, I think it's doubling or something because of my I have a bunch of yeah, I've got a bunch of subsidiaries that might be throwing it off here, but you can see that my field isn't quite big enough, but I've got men's and I've got women's. So really this was scanned in 2 zones for 54 and for 5, and for some reason it's doubling here. I'm not sure why. Um, and I have not seen that before, but if you find that in the field, I'm sure we can take a look at it, get it resolved. But the point is that even with it doubling, if you understand your zones, you know what's going on. You've scanned it in 2 zones. So now I know to go look in a zone that might be causing that problem, right? So, um, in real life, this actually happened. We had a jacket that had 3 jackets and a rounder in Fairbanks, Alaska, and it instead of saying 3, it said 63, and they had over 100 zones. They didn't know where to look for the other zone that might be holding it because the zone was clean, the rack was clean, everything said 3 all the way through, except that the discrepancy report said 63, right? All right, so anyway, we looked in that report. It showed us that 60 jackets had been counted in the jewelry counter, right? Which is a little odd. So we were then able to go into the jewelry counter and go back into that zone, right? And find out what was going on. So if you're going into physical inventory, you have an option to go into stores, right? And then into the merge zone list, then we could find the jewelry counter or whatever we're looking for, right? And we could, and again, this unmerge is a button that seems to want to vanish too. So sometimes we have to use the menu designer to add it back in there, right? Then we could unmerge that zone. And now if I go back over to zones, that one's totally editable, right? It's been taken out of the physical. So I could go physical inventory zones, and we see that that one is not merged any longer. So I can now go to scanned, and I can make a correction to that zone if you follow where I'm going. Now, obviously, if we counted 54 of those, and they weren't those, then we were missing 54 of something else, and we should probably go to that zone and add that in, right? We should click add counts and add the appropriate other item in, but you get where I'm going there, right? So once we make our corrections, we could then go ahead and merge that zone again. And that should lead us to um, almost to the step 4, right? So the other thing we can do, and this is actually a nice trick too. Let's go back into inventory. So let's say I have a like on a given count sheet, right? On a given inventory sheet, I have a number of corrections I want to make, and I don't really feel like unmerging 6 different zones and finding all the items to correct them. Another option that's kind of good that I like a lot actually is to go into zones and just make a new zone. So I could make as many of these as I want, right? I could go in and say store and correction 1, whatever, right? And then I could go into my correction 1 zone, go into scanned, and go into add counts. And in manual mode now, I could say, look, I got this item here, right? And I want to take from that item, I want to take 5 back from that item. So I could count that at a negative quantity. Then I could go and say, yeah, and I'm putting those 5 on this item here, right? So right from here, you could just key in the differences you want to affect all kinds of items, right? Without having to go and find them and actually unmerge them and correct them and all that. And this is sweet because it leaves a beautiful audit trail, right? So so we close this, we back up 1 layer, and we just merge this, and it goes and fixes all of our stuff for us, right? So I like that. I like that method. I like it because if I have 5 sheets and I do a quick 10 key and I know the total amount that I'm correcting by, then I could in fact print this out, right? Uh, this stone here, I could go into scanned and print this out, and I could show the total on this thing, right? Well, this has a total of 0 because it's going to be 0 because it's got 5 in and 5 out, right? But the point is that I could validate my work as I go. I guess is where I'm trying to get to, without spending too much time on it. Um, so okay, so step 4, right? The last step in the process is, once we've nailed any discrepancies or that were not valid and corrected them, so we believe the count is 100% corrected, the last step is to accept these, right? So to accept them is pretty easy in this version. You go into stores and you click update PI, right? And then you check off your store and set your reason code to the appropriate reason code for physical inventory. Click update. That's it. Now, when we do that, it's going to write a whole series of adjustment memos automatically, right? So we click update here. It's going to go update our physical inventory. And what that's going to do is create adjustment memos. Now, you can get 900 SKUs on a given adjustment memo, right? So unless you have more than 900, you're only going to get one memo, and I have nowhere near 900, right? So I got one memo. Now, uh, the next thing I would say is that I have created out here in reports, I've created a whole series of reports in the custom section here, right? So I could rank by the top 10 departments per store. I could rank the top 10 departments for the whole company. I could do it by item or style. So there's all these reports. So let's just run top 10 here. And so when we run this, we're going to need to pick the reason code that we use for physical inventory, because everybody uses a different one. So I didn't really know which one to pick, right? So physical inventory and okay. And then this will rank your departments, starting with the one that lost the most money on top, down to the one that had the biggest overage on the bottom, right? Then if we wanted to go see inside one of those departments, we could run an item one filtering for that department, right? It's a really good idea to evaluate the results of your physical and understand it so that you can avoid doing it next time, right? So there's a whole bank of these. Like I said, I've got it by vendor down here. Here's by vendor, top 10 per store. Here's just ranked by vendor. Here's by items. Here's by description one or style level. There's your top 10 we ran. There's the top 10 by store. There's ranked departments overall, all of them, and then there's alphabetical departments. So there's a lot of different ways to get in and slice and dice that data and really understand it. A quick note for remote stores, okay? If you're a remote store and you're doing your physical inventory, under options, system preferences, there's a couple of things we should peek at in here, but to finish that statement, under merchandise physical inventory, right? This switch here, update inventory on remote station, controls whether you have rights to finish your own inventory. If this is checked, that means you have to relinquish the ability. You have to send the count to the main, and the main will in turn update it and send you the results back. So I think in version 9, most of my clients do not check that. So that means that the remote store can start the inventory, they can conduct the inventory, they can update it, they can write the memos. The memos themselves will pull back to the main, and the main will see the results of the physical inventory by seeing the adjustments that were made at the end of it, if that makes sense to everybody. So pros and cons. If you do check it off and you do send the count back, the main will have the count. They could go refer to the count in the future. Not a big deal. Remote access gives them that by just dialing into your remote store anyway. So the con would be that, you do physical and you send the count in, but nobody's at the main, so they get in the next day, they look at it, they accept it, then they pull the results back. So you got to wait like half a day to get your results back, right? Till they get done evaluating it. So, if we have a good team in the field and we feel confident that it's working the way we should, and we want to be done with it, then I would not have this checked. I would definitely just be able to finish it myself. Here's our import maps while we're here, right? So here's my import map. Uh, and an import map is nothing more than what we looked at a minute ago, right? If we had on the desktop here one of these zones, right? I mean, you can see the ones that number one and number two got renamed to BAK, right? But three, we didn't touch three, so it's still named appropriately, right? And so if we just pop in here and do this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Anyway, you get the idea. Now you can see that the first 6 digits here are skew. The seventh digit is ignored, right? So starting on, that should be 8 right there. Apparently I can't type today. Well, that's not really not nothing new, right? Anyway, so the eighth character and the ninth character, and maybe the 10th and 11th character or 12th character, depending on how big our count is, right? Could be count, right? So if we look back in here, you can see what I've done. Beginning on 1, ending on 6 for a length of 6 is my skew. Uh, Beginning on 8, skipping over 7, ending on 12 for a length of 5 is my count. I'm not importing zone names or sublocations or serial numbers or lot numbers, and I am importing alternate lookups, ALUs. I'm not importing UPCs or item numbers, the old item numbers. So you just designate what you're importing and how it's coming in, right? And what the field length is, and it takes care of it for you then. So you could create as many of these as you want. So if you have an export file, or if you have UPCs, or if you have different sizes, you can format this to any size you want. Now that might mean, like if you had over here, to make sure we're all on the same page, right? If I had UPCs in here, right? So if I had a UPC in here that was 12 digits, right? And then I had like a comma here and a count, right, like that, then I would want to, in Excel, I would format this to always be 12 digits, right? And there would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 leading spaces here, right? And then in my options here, trim leading or trailing blanks. See, I generally wouldn't strip zeros. I would trim leading blanks out, right? And here's my use zone switch at the top, by the way. I'm always in use zones. I don't see that there's any ever a need to do a simple physical. I have one client that does it. They have 120 SKUs in their inventory, and only about 80 of them are current. So they just export into an Excel spreadsheet. They do their count in Excel, then they sort the inventory screen the same way, and they just key their counts in for the 80 items, right? That's it. So they can do a physical. It's a simple physical. But the rest of us that have actual merchandise need to break it up into little zones so we have better control. And there's my filter switch, right? If we want it turned on or off, there it is right there. Um, being able to do a filtered inventory is good. I mean, it's more work. I'm going to warn you, if you consider doing a cycle count, it is more work because you got to basically run a report a week ahead of time, and you got to take that report and go find all that stuff. Then you got to write your map, right? You got to build your map so you know how to count the stuff. So you got to do a little bit more prep work on the upside, and you got to make sure you know where all that stuff is, right? But it can be a excellent tool. Um, People that do cycle counts and people that contribute to cycle counts, the associates, they start to understand inventory control on a much better level, and they're aware that if you throw that thing in a dump box, you're going to have to find it next week when you do the count, right? So you don't have as many like dumped boxes full of crap in the back stock room. Um, People know you're going to have to count that stuff, so they keep it organized. It's a good thing for the culture and the health of the store. But like I said, it's a lot of work because you're doing a physical like every week then, right? A little one. So, all right, I think I've beat this up pretty well. Are there any questions? Did I skip anything? Is there any weird situations you guys want to throw at me? Either in the chat or I could unmute you. I'm gonna guess that's a no. so far. All right, so I guess I'm going to say thank you very much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. I hope you got out of it what you needed. Again, this is Big Hairy Dog, and then my name is Jeff, and I guess we will talk to you next time on the next webinar. All right, thank you very much.
Jedziesz po tego mistrza? Tak.